Hello guys, welcome back to another episode of Trend Digest. My name is Nanebo, of course, with Double H at the back, and I am here with Awuchi. On today's episode, we are still on Dr. Frank Amoakohene. But to boss answer, Awuchi, if you have a go.
Nana nyame adom bre na ya
Obebre. We can't say you yeah, the information brema. Yeah, na mo kasa we dey take the information from the source. We dey take you people, you've seen the interview. Go to our TikTok page, Trend Digest. Awuchi had an interview with Dr. Frank Amoakohene. And the information, bro, and that's from the source. Oh, too much. Now let's get straight into it. Dr. Frank Amoakohene's vetting. Yes, Awuchi was there live and colored. And or the near course so in a bebre, then you huni womb. We'll see a can't mention yeah, the abet the pictures, videos, evidence. Yeah, trouble the womb. Kasasa. Awuchi, Momu huni womb, the do na one, but Yatumase. Awuchi, Dr. Frank Amoakohene's vetting. I say, baby. Dr. Frank Amoakohene's vetting. Fire room near course.
All right, so said na ebo akan no, your movie be akwaba back to this channel, and we are here to bring you authentic information from the right source, just as he said earlier on. So today we are going to speak about Dr. Frank Amoakohene, but today we are not going to speak much about his persona, but rather we are going to speak about the vetting of Dr. Frank Amoakohene. You see, so the vetting of Dr. Frank Amoakohene, eje nyabedru. So the vetting, it was postponed twice. So early on, it was supposed to be on a Friday. It was postponed to a Tuesday. Then it later came to a Monday, which was on the 27th of January 2025. The time, so the time allocated was supposed to be 1 p.m. But you could do honor, and you must sign the time had to be changed because the vetting of the preceding candidates were not completed. So we had to wait for some time around 3 p.m. before Dr. Frank Amoakohene could take his seat, and then the vetting could commence somewhere around 3:30 thereabout. Now, my mini came from before say about vetting proper, the preparations before the vetting. So you see, early on, presentations you know, you can say if the vetting of Dr. Frank Amoakohene were to be organized in the Ashanti region, the only place I can make my baby bakope. I want your Baba Yara Sports Stadium because they would have been mobbed. Why here? Inga ebe ding. Such a man obe coordinate and obe enforce your friend is a man for some be come ne enyoma ewo auditorium. So we had 11 buses. 11 buses in the free Ashanti region. Eba and Crimantem. So for the vetting of Dr. Frank Amoakohene, you see, we have invited candidates Accra. You have a number of people, numbers, and so on. But for the candidature of Dr. Frank Amoakohene, he had 11 buses being bussed from Kumasi, or the regional capital of the Ashanti region, that is Kumasi, to Accra. Out of 11, after 11 buses, there were 50-seater. 50, 11. Which are more than 500. Bear 550. No. Again, 35-seater bus bako. And I need to go PA in Cramentem. Then there were 2 sprinters. I also joined here. Technically, for Dr. Frank Amoakohene vetting, there were 14 cars. Private cars, the American one, baby. The flights, and so the American one is baby. There were 14 cars. A movie in the Ashanti region. This is minus private vehicles, a movie. A movie from the Ashanti region specifically to go and support Dr. Frank Amoakohene. You see, this goes back to talk about the credibility of the Ashanti regional minister designate. He's somebody who is loved by the chunk of the Ashantis. And you see, after his nomination, on the media, people have now come to understand the fact that Dr. Frank Amoakohene is not just loved by a fraction of people, but he is loved by majority of the Ashantis. And that is why we have not had, as at now, a single group or a single individual, not even from the camp of the NPP, come out to say this man is not fit to be the Ashanti regional minister. So you could do Doctor had to be prepared. And if you watch our interview with Dr. Frank Amoakohene, he said he had to be taken through a rigorous process. Mock vets na ye na ankasa no. No kra me yemu bebre na na ehunu say no kra na emu aden because we had to drill him. We had to take him to a level ye be break just so in case say nyame adom na okodru parliament bibi e be ba team no he can take a war. But trust me, in as much as we took Dr. Frank Amoakohene through an intensive drilling mock vetting, that guy did not break. And me had to say at a point now because the guy was very prepared. And you see, with doctor interviews are all granting now or taking the preparation from me say mock vetting there. But me, as I sit here and from where I sit, I can tell you for a fact that doctor preparation to be the Ashanti regional minister did not start 3 days ago. You know why? I'll tell you for a fact that Dr. Frank Amoakohene'S preparation started about 4 or 5 years ago because he was so active during the campaign time. He went to every constituency. Dr. Frank Amoakohene made sure that he was with the youth on the ground. He made sure that he was with the grassroots. He made sure he allocated time to listen to the plight of people. He made sure he was so welcoming that Obi Obaba Doctor Nchembi so oyakra so oya penini Dr. Betie nipa ne how then he puts it into consideration. So on one of the interviews, the numerous interviews Dr. Frank Amoakohene has had, he stated something. He said that Katie Hammond lost his seat not because of anything, but Katie Hammond lost his seat because of toilets. You know why? Because of toilets. Because Uko Katie Hammond during his campaign, Katie Hammond constituency, what he realized was that the whole of Katie Hammond constituencies, there is not even a single public toilet facility anywhere. So you see, this is somebody who has lost touch with the people. That is talking about Katie Hammond. So doctor listened to the plight of people and he gave them the assurance that once the NDC is voted into power, he is going to make sure within his capacity as the regional secretary. And when you go to the constitution of the NDC, the regional secretary doubles as the CEO of the party within the region. So he's going to work within his capacity as the CEO of the region to ensure that these facilities, these social amenities which the people lack, were going to be brought to them. And that was he making a promise from the capacity of a regional secretary of the NDC. So fast forward, when he was nominated, the people roared with happiness. The people were so happy that they have one of them. That is why when you go on the media, the TikTokers knew that they have one of them. The youth who know Dr. Frank Amoakohene, that Saobo Dr. Frank Amoakohene no anka toboya. You have not mentioned Dr. Frank Amoakohene. Knew that they have one of them. That is why the Nooks, the Pusag, the USAG, the Grasag, every student leadership front was so elated because now we have one of our own. This person is going to understand us. Have you checked the number of schools or the number of tertiary institutions in the Ashanti region? It is enormous. So if we have one of our own going to spearhead our affairs, it means he knows our challenges. He has been through our challenges and he can champion them. So these are some of the things which happened before. So doctor's preparation, as I sit here, I can tell you for a fact that doctor's preparation was not started 3 days ago. Doctor's preparation was not started a week ago. Doctor's preparation started about 4 years ago when he hit the grounds to campaign for the NDC. Then he made time to listen to people. Then he interacted with people. Then he bonded with people. So people knew him as a man of their own, as a young, exuberant, youthful man who was so poised into ensuring that their concerns and welfare was always going to be spearheaded. That is what people were so elated about. So some years ago, doctor started the preparation. We only helped him bring out the best in him. We brought out a beast in him. And when it was on 27th of January, when doctor assumed the seat. Now, before doctor assumed the seat, you see, I've already spoken to you about the number of buses which went to Accra. Funny enough, omo Accra, omo pie omo buy say omo ba be hwe Dr. Frank Amoakohene. Nana Eboa, omo kra no mo do so chen buses na buy no. So the moment we got to Parliament, me see free came when we drew Parliament, no, the atmosphere was intense because bear in mind this is one of the most anticipated veterans ever in the history of the country. For the first time, we are having a 34-year-old young man being vetted for the high office of the Ashanti Regional Minister. Ashanti region is one of the most populous, if not the populous region within the country. So if we have a young man as young as 34 years coming to assume this high throne, then it means the media were ready. Then it means agenda people, the NPP or the opposition people who were ready to agenda. Lenses was ready. And the youth now, TikTok for now, over 300,000 followers at Dr. Frank Amoakohene. The people who were in Accra, I can tell you for a fact, when we were taking the pictures of people who came to grace the vetting occasion, there were people as far from Doma who came to support Dr. Frank Amoakohene. And Dr. Frank Amoakohene did not even know the people who were coming from Doma. In the Ejija pictures, and there was a timer, we called the people from Accra, and the number of people who buy I'm not Dr. Betra pictures no. And I'm moving baby. You get it? So, yeah, we say your marriage now, young cop the vetting proper. So, this is one thing I realized. So, as I sit here, if I am to describe Dr. Frank Amoakohene, in terms of, let me say, if I am going to use abbreviations or if I am going to use the alphabet, I am going to use the first letter and I'm going to give a breakdown of these letters. The first alphabet I am going to give to Dr. Frank Amoakohene is an S. After an S, the next letter would be I. The next one would be E. The next one would be C. Then the last one would be V. So I'm going to describe the version of Dr. Frank Amoakohene with these 5 letters. S-I-V-E-C. All right. So that is S-I-E-C and V. These 5 letters. All right. So with the S, we realize that from the version of Dr. Frank Amoakohene, he is a strategic thinker. That was the first thing. That was the first take home note. So when I say he's a strategic thinker, this is what I think. Or this is what I mean by saying he's a strategic thinker. So we realized that Dr. Frank Amoakohene was able to navigate the questions which the vetting panel were giving to him. So when it got to a point where you feel that the question which is coming from an honorable member of the panel was so difficult, and the people who were seated back watching, so what one was, Charlie, question with you. By the time you realize, some way, somehow, Dr. Frank Amoakohene has answered the question. Say, what now? What you want to feel jiggy? What now? What you are like? How did this guy maneuver his way around to answer this question so magnificently? A typical example. So we saw the MP for Mampong. MP for Mampong no, in Dr. Frank Amoakohene's coming up. No, he has. We made mention in the previous episode of Trend Digest that he contested as parliamentary candidate of the NDC, and this is the MP, the NPP MP, Dr. Frank Amoakohene contested again, and he gave him a run for his money. And before I say Minister MP no ever been making a submission, he said all these things, acknowledging the prowess of Dr. Frank Amoakohene. And the question now, I would say he was trying to be diabolic, talking about the Swami interchange, the MPP, it was saying this about and all that. And you see, you know what the answer Dr. Frank Amoakohene gave him has got social media talking. That when NPP cut the sword for the Swami interchange, the sword got missing. And he, as Dr. Frank Amoakohene, is here to find the sword. I feel that demo. That is how intelligent the guy is. And how was he answer a question? Because the MP was trying to be mischievous by saying that the NPP initiated yes, it is true that the NPP initiated the project, but when they commissioned the project, and this is on record, anybody in the Ashanti region would have testified to this, but he was trying to be mischievous. Say, and this is how Dr. Frank Amoakohene answered him. And you see, the moment now you started vetting, Dr. Frank Amoakohene, when he was being asked to speak about himself, and the first question, no, Pia Bonnie said, Then the chairman for the vetting had to come in say, Mr. Ramo, we don't clap here, we don't cheer here. If you are going to do this, that is how people were controlled. And yes, sir, that you know, take 7 hours. So, S, Dr. Frank Amoakohene is a strategic thinker. Now, when I speak about the I, he is an informed decision maker. So when I say he's an informed decision maker, this is what I mean. Just as I said earlier on, some few minutes ago, during the campaign time, Dr. Frank Amoakohene was with the grassroots. So he knew the challenges of people on grounds. He knew everything which people were going through. So when he sat before a panel and they were scrutinizing him, he had the information. And he didn't just have the information, he had the credible information, because this was the plight of the people. This was what the people really needed. And he gave that to the panel. So he was so informed that papers are not good anymore. If the panel wanted to go into documents, if the panel wanted to go into and figures, ne facts are Dr. Frank Amoakohene baby. And you see, when he was asked a question about unemployment rate, Dr. Frank Amoakohene quoted the unemployment rate, percentage rate of the country. Then he quoted the percentage rate in the Ashanti region. This is a man who has studied the Ashanti region like it is his own baby, like it is his firstborn. I, a friend Kendrick. He knows the region well. He has profiled the region. So when he was speaking with authority. And that is an informed leader. So let's go to the E. You see, I'd say Dr. Frank Amoakohene is an effective communicator. When you go on social media, when you go on Facebook, when you go on TikTok, when you go on IG, when you go on every social media platform you go on, the most talked about person right now in the country is Dr. Frank Amoakohene. You see, on that same day that Dr. Frank Amoakohene was being vetted, that was the same day one of the people's own, Malik Basintali, was going to start his work as the CEO of youth employment. But you see, Dr. Frank Amoakohene, everybody knows the aura Malik Basintali carries in the country now. He's one of the most loved people. And maybe on another episode, I would come and give a relationship between Dr. Frank Amoakohene and Malik Basintali. These two guys have worked together during their days as student leaders. I'll come to that. But you see, the version of Dr. Frank Amoakohene had climaxed to the point that it was trending at a point number 1 on Twitter. It was trending everywhere. It had overshadowed all the things which were happening in the country. And you see, one of the reasons why it was trending because Dr. Frank Amoakohene is an effective communicator. He carried himself very well that every policy, every question which he was asked, everything he wanted to tell the people, he explained to the layman's understanding. So you see, the person who was sitting right next to Dr. Frank Amoakohene or behind Dr. Frank Amoakohene is the Asante Mampo Hema in the Ashanti region. Asante Hene is a golden stool, and when you go to Mampon, that is the silver stool. That is Asante Mampon is next to, let's say, the Ashanti Hene when he's not around. So the Asante Mampon Hema herself, Dr. Frank Amoakohene, and that will be the last thing I'll touch on. The people Dr. Frank Amoakohene put to the process. Obetna, your friends, Dr. Amoakohene, and Dr. Amoakohene Kasano. So watch all the videos going round. The woman's face was beaming with smiles. This was a queen mother who was so happy. Say Onuaneba, I will free the mantem Asante Mamponso, articulating him so well and so plainly that everybody understood him very well. And that is Dr. Frank Amoakohene. There is no ambiguity to anything Dr. Frank Amoakohene said. He said so in plain language. That is an effective communicator. Now, let me move to the V, because time will come.
Sure.
So, the V. V, say, you see, in order to excel so much at a vetting, you need to anticipate all these factors, right? And before I go to the V, he is a team player. That is the C. The C is he's able to collaborate with people. So in the interview we had with Dr. Frank Amoakohene, he spoke about the team he had who helped him during his vetting, before his vetting process. You understand? Which I would say I was even a part of that team. We had to drill him. And as a team player, when certain questions were being asked, I stood there and I was like, so for instance, let me cite a typical example. When Dr. Frank Amoakohene was asked the question about his cloth he wore for the vetting, I was standing right next to Waxy Billion. So we saw frequent updates during the process when there was a picture and an update on what Dr. Frank Amoakohene would do during the process as the process was going on. So I was using my phone for that. So at that time, the phone which was idle I was standing next to Waxy Billion. So just when that question was asked, I knew this was a past question. This is a question which people are going to love what he was going to come up with. So I immediately picked Waxy's phone and then I had to record it because I knew what was going to come up. And you see, the input we made, the people who made the input, Dr. Frank Amoakohene made us so proud that at a point I had goosebumps on my skin because everything he was saying was right how we put it during the process. And this is the leader we have for the Ashanti region. The implication is in Dr. Frank Amoakohene's submissions, when we asked him about his last words for the youth, he said that his social media channels are still active to the youth. So anybody who has a challenge, any problem, any suggestion, just send it through. And he is going to make sure that he's going to tackle them one after the other. So if I can be a clear testimony, and the people around him, which Dr. Frank Amoakohene has praised for his preparation for the vetting, we know that indeed Dr. Frank Amoakohene put in place every recommendation we made. Then it means the Ashanti region has a leader who is going to listen to their problems. The Ashanti region has a leader who is not going to be an authoritarian, but the Ashanti region has a leader who is going to be democratic. And the Ashanti region has a leader who is always going to welcome people with open arms. That is the person we are talking about, Dr. Frank Amoakohene. So after the C, the last one, that is the V. Like I said earlier, in order to know all these things, in order to excel so well with all these things, you have to be visionary. That is putting or planning ahead of time. And that is why at this point, I would name or call that Dr. Frank Amoakohene as a proactive leader. He envisaged that when he is coming for the vetting, he has to be an effective communicator. He has to be a strategic thinker. He has to be a team player. He has to know the plight of the people. And he took all these factors and put them into consideration before coming. And I think at this point, that is the reason why I feel His Excellency John Dramani Mahama named him as the Ashanti Regional Minister Designate, because we know His Excellency John Dramani Mahama as a leader who is visionary. So when he saw that there is a young man, there is a hope within the Ashanti region, there is an untapped resource. When he realized that there is a prospect within the Ashanti region, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama said to himself that indeed I am not going to let this talent go waste, but I am going to believe in this talent. I am going to give him the platform he needs. I am going to make sure that this potential or this prospect would be harnessed to the maximum potential. And that is why His Excellency John Dramani Mahama named Dr. Frank Amoakohene as the Ashanti Regional Minister Designate. So it is a trait which His Excellency has. And now his minister within the region has it as well. So you see, these are all factors which came together before, during the vetting of Dr. Frank Amoakohene. I'd let you come in before I come with the last one so that we end.
This is love. This is love. Looking at what you said, from 11 buses, right?
Yes.
11 buses, and the love the people showed there is actually something that is very impressive. One of the favorite moments I actually enjoyed was when he was asked about him going to be a TikTok minister and those things, and the response he actually gave What's na say me and na you ni hokrampo and na hwehwehwe no o hwe ade na otimi say na it's not just because AB and Kofo can also can be. You're seeing how the man is Charlie the composure or relaxing or to na man sound like it's just like obi a so na kind eh was starting and prepare free and near actually ya why ade na nti what do one is like Kofo can say when preparation means opportunity. That point na when him know ye masa and never say any me bro for number doctor have me bro doctor have me bro for number until the what you say so which me the American say in as much as we say Debbie ya can say and the people love him and it's not just kasa yakoba bia yehu and on our TikTok trend that just movie there dance say our videos that yeah talk videos about doctor it's not just about because he's a doctor assistant it's because of how people love him and omunim say or kan we omunim say adwuma na kasa na o ye enya kasa keke so for you come last one
right. Yeah. Last one no. On you were speaking about love. So we are going to end on the note of love. So you see, Yebabe Valentine on the 14th of February. I kasa about love.
Okay.
One surprising thing is a young gentleman who entered into mainstream politics not more than 6 years. You share the pool our parliament. And in the pool, this time around, I am not talking about the numbers. I am going to give people about just 10 people. The aura, the charisma of Dr. Frank Amoakohene'S PA Parliament for the veteran. The Edikan, your friend is saying, Nana Ejakuma Dufie, the second. Nana Ejakuma Dufie, the second. And this is the Queen Mother of Asante Mampong. Yeah, trend digest previously. We've made people aware that Dr. Frank Amoakohene hails from Asante Mampong. And today we have stated that the Asante Mampong stool is the silver stool in the Ashanti region. So you see, set a minister you're naming from Asante Mampong. Na Queen Mother of Asante Mampong nemu. Oba bedin the 25th anniversary on 7th of February. But Nana out of her tight schedule. To tune into ma ebai ebe supporting this year. Nana osebonsu na nkono so ba. But one or two things in Nana osebonsu entimi anya the arm that is the Asante Mampong hene ankasa.
Okay.
Eti Nana hima betna say to tune into ma ne kente na fe.
Na ho so fe.
Oh,
it was good fe.
Oni asema nipa berebuza me. Say, Nana, Asante Mampong him our and I'm like, yo, how can you ask me this question? You see, no one fair, young, and said him kind. Throughout the vetting, she was so impressed with how Doctor carried himself, especially at the point when Doctor was talking about the cloth. He spoke so well about culture. He spoke so well about traditions. He spoke so well about the Ashanti region. It's Nana Hima Ebetina Nakunyum. After the next person, Dr. Kwabena Dufo, former finance minister. This man is a different breed of charismatic leader, and he's somebody whom a lot of the youth look up to. Dr. Kwabena Dufo. On also Tinegem, our Dr. Echi. Also Shanyoma. And Dr. Dufo, I would say at this point, he's one of the most happiest people because Dr. Frank Amoakohene and Wofase. And Dr. Dufo has believed in Dr. Frank Amoakohene right from the days of his student leadership. And to say what will be achieving in Mofra Brima na afenipane se wanimunyam. When people said that why would His Excellency John Dramani Mahama name a young person like Dr. Amoakohene to lead a region as huge as the Ashanti region, Dr. Kwabena Dufo, I said, I say, hold my beer. And what Jane Akunya and what's in Akunyum. And wash it, the warfare, and warfare, no, or the map no, back to back. Dr. Dufonia say. So Dr. Frank Amoakohene brought the Asante Mampong Hima to Parliament. He brought Dr. Kwabena Dufo to Parliament. He brought Augustus Andrews to Parliament. You can't Augustus Andrews, and he probably brought any no. Do not friend on Anakwesi. On the Ashanti region NDC chairman. You see? And I'm saying, I'm Brassier, and then Dr. Frank Amoakohene, a boy when he was a secretary. me posti a picture of the veteran. Obi busa me say, man na washa white na ye hwan because doctor pictures bi obi hu say me posti bia, ohun sa man ni wom. That is when I told the person say, "Eye the Ashanti region chairman. Adwumaden a doctor eboye ene na ho brase enti. But bi obeko bia ne chairman na den edi na chi because he is proud of Dr. Frank Amoakohene and how he has carried himself, how he has carried the NDC, and how he's going to carry the Ashanti region as the Ashanti regional minister. If you want man, Professor Otin Eji, eso eba. When you talk about Professor Otin Eji, he's a former energy minister. Again, a former energy minister, and also eba parliament to support Dr. Frank Amoakohene. The fifth person I'm about Obono. Dr. Frank Amoakohene dofo. Mrs. Juliet Amoakohene. Na sade no. The way I was see jwato so. Na ho fama na ho suo. Kasa oba ho afa na.
Ono ankasa na normal no. Ele ho afa dada. Na wasa ya to so aka ho.
Oba ho afa. You see, her beauty lit up the committee room. Baby ani e ho no shrine because Juliet I want to not to dinosaur. And only me na Julia Tetin chain.
Not right. Not Dr. Kabna before.
Enti why do oh room Saturday my doctor eba no doctor room say no. To be honest, omo na omo jam chain na. Abranti I say Uru has a damn way. You see, let me tell you something. Say ukwa dwabo bi ase. Na say otumfo nana osei tutu. Epio and say ahemfo akese ni bi epio a it mean say a diamond na mo and say even environment na mo as a what mean say as a main TV and I say why you do and when doctor entered the room something like that happened.
All right, and when
so Mrs. Juliet Amoakohene na mo fe etini kunje and throughout the vetting also nanim series and then I me follow some commentary on social media and everybody is speaking about the smiles of Mrs. Juliet Amoakohene. She was proud of her husband. Nana that thing say warrior we proud.
Come on. Omo the interview she also answered the questions brilliantly.
What's that bro? Hey,
interview I was
hey.
I don't what you say Madam Julia, you say shy kakra, but shyness ni na echi no. All answer questions. We say or smile no already. Hey, already shy.
Already doctor.
Already for doctor share the buy right.
Ami
official you because oba be support you say the whole so fake or so te brofo or so you make oh come on man. Come on. I better now excelling.
Every successful man. There is a woman.
True.
And that is the definition of Mrs. Juliet Amoakohene. Also, the sixth person, Bishop David Ofori. Bishop David Ofori. The leader of the Ashanti region clergy. Ashanti region has somebody on the one. Or said that say and I just say or the Nanimunyam eba be tie Dr. Amoakohene. Yanko. Number 7, Honorable Samuel Sapon. Also your former Ashanti regional minister. Dr. Esua Efi enim defo ama enim defo ekuku dam e de omani monyam oma ya Ashanti regional minister omo de omani monyam aba betanichi e won parliament. Omo hira no ebuni so. Afei Mrs. Betty Mold Idris, former attorney.
Dr.
Frank Amoakohene mame baako. I saw Dr. Amoakohene from his days as a student leader. And also, she was there, seated right behind Dr. Frank Amoakohene and supporting Professor Otin Abebiu. Professor's now
Charlie.
Professor Otin Abebiu was there. Mr. Inti Edu Bonsafu. Ono na ye powers of grace no abusuano ono na ye your friend is omo wofa and ono a na say abusuanity abusuana nominate ni say ye desia no e de animonyam e bra abusuano papa yesrew for wanimonyam fa ko never ko shira ye desia so Mr. Edu Bonsafo was also there. The third person, Reverend Stephen Obeng Asari. Reverend Stephen Obeng Asari. And also every the Church of Pentecost. Obekaya yedikaya eti won say Dr. Frank Amoakohene an elder of the Church of Pentecost. The Church of Pentecost designated a reverend say omra na omo de hie no omra no fa na nimunyam beta na chi on say ye bo footballer How many players are on the football field?
22.
Hey!
Boy, 11 players here.
Okay, for a team.
For a team.
For a particular team.
11.
Come on. Okay, so there are 11 players for a particular football team. 80. So far, my boy 10. And I can't back. Your boy 11 or no? Only back. Appear Stadium. Appear Stadium. You see, we should know this. Appear Stadium is currently one of the most influential people in Ghana.
True.
He has built his connect so well that only the young, the aged, the powerful, enti se wonye obi te say Appear Stadium a ofri asantemam se wode nanim onyam ba beta wachi. That is huge.
True.
If you have an influential person like Appear Stadium support you, whether you like it or not, it goes a long mile to affect your candidature. And he is going to be one of the people. I'll tell you this for a fact. Appear Stadium is very blunt. If you are not going well, he will tell you.
I can't tell straight.
So the success of Dr. Frank Amoakohene, to an extent, Appear Stadium would also play a key role in it. So if you have Appear Stadium, come there to support you as the 11th person. And these are just 11 people that there are other important dignitaries. Ebia many anti the mana obi wakra ebia me hunu ba me nim say we a doctor we a professor we a engineer we I couldn't take note of all those people because that day no I was more than Fabrizio Romano. At a point I was a security person for doctor. At a point I was a Jama person for doctor. At a point I was media handler for doctor. Says na me nyuma be enti enya nipa nyina na mani tie dey etimi e pa wo so. But you see, the last words I am going to end this session with was the performance of Dr. Frank Amoakohene. I have given alphabets to round everything, but my final words, you see, Dr. Frank Amoakohene gave a great impression of himself. Dr. Frank Amoakohene made a huge account for the youth of this country. And that is the reason why I would keep on saying this. The youth of this country are so proud and happy to have Dr. Frank Amoakohene as our representative in this parliament or in this government. So when we saw that stellar performance of Dr. Frank Amoakohene, we were all happy because what Chere say, when the youth are given equal opportunity, we would utilize it to the point that this country would develop. And Dr. Frank Amoakohene became a black star by defending the song, "Arise Ghana Youth, for your country demands great devotion." Dr. Frank Amoakohene has devoted his time to learn. Dr. Frank Amoakohene has devoted himself to listen to the plight of the ordinary Ghanaian. And that is why he gave a stellar performance. It is not surprising that the chairman of the occasion rounded or crowned the whole thing up by saying, "Honorable nominee Boggling." These were the final words of the chairman. Honorable nominee Boggling. Again, Franklin Kujo, the founder and CEO of Imani Ghana, take it to the Facebook page. Actually, BB said, where did the NDC find this young man in the Ashanti region? He's intelligent, he's articulate, he's bold, and I can tell you this for a fact. And on record, I was standing next to one NPP guru in the Parliament House after we finished everything. And he asked one of the NPP people that, how did you people manage to lose such a gem in our strongest hold to our biggest opposition, which is the NDC? We need to inquire into this. And this should not happen in the NPP again. So it means Dr. Frank Amoakohene is now an inspiration to the NPP. The NPP are now going to invest in the youth. And this is as a result of how Dr. Frank Amoakohene has been able to carry himself about. So I would say Dr. Frank Amoakohene is a blessing to the youth of this country. And we should all support him with the last pint of our blood, to the point that Dr. Frank Amoakohene, when you mention his name, it is going to be synonymous to success.
Thank you very much, Awuche. We ukobio, wa nkobio, UTB, one TB, or share episode we cry, or betting in us, you get all the information you need because it free hot direct and a bremo. So this is where we end today's episode of Trend Digest. My name is Nana Ebo, of course, double H at the back, and Awuchi brought us all the information concerning Dr. Frank Amoakohene'S vetting. Stay blessed, we're signing out. Peace.